let's talk about the Pathfinder Beginner Box. We'll talk about both the physical box because I have one, but I actually didn't play with the physical box. I actually did things digitally through Foundry, and Foundry and Paizo have like this partnership. I'll go over both of them, and I will put timestamps down below, so if you're not interested in the physical one or vice versa, you can just click and skip to that section as you would like. I bought this guy on Amazon late 2022. I was super pregnant, that's all I remember. I have played the D&D 5e starter kit way back when, like, I don't know, 2014, 2015? I don't know, a while ago. The version I played is not the one that they sell now, the Essentials or whatever. I can't compare to the D&D starter kit that you can buy now, but I can compare to what I was expecting, which was not what I got, which was pretty awesome. I also have a Call of Cthulhu starter set. It also is more like the D&D one. I feel like that's the standard, and Pathfinder was like, about that. First, let's just go over the books. In your beginner box, you get a lot of stuff. You get 2 books, so you got one that is, this is the Game Master's one, and this is like the player's handbook. Obviously, they're thin, shortened versions of it, and they're pretty good quality. Like, they're not gonna last a lot of wear and tear if you're constantly opening and using this, which is kind of the point. You do want to buy the actual player's handbook. They're kind of plasticky, thick pages, so they feel like pretty good. They're not gonna tear out or, you know, anything too easily. You could probably get it wet even a little bit and it would still kind of last. I actually used the GM one a lot. I didn't use the players one at all. One, I didn't make characters, and I didn't have my players make characters. I had them use the starter characters. But 2, I was reading both of these books and it just felt like I was reading the same thing that I already knew, like about basic DMing and all of that. So I actually ended up watching a whole bunch of YouTubes instead about the differences, mostly in combat for Pathfinder versus 5e, and that actually made it easier for me. Regardless, they're obviously both pared down books, so it makes it much more digestible. This one is the actual adventure, so you can see you've got the map on the first page, which is nice, and then you do have this second floor map in here somewhere as well. Each section is kind of laid out. It tells you how many experience points in this box. Overall, the design itself is really nice, and I'm a sucker for good design. Actually, I think I showed my husband and he was like, that looks like something you would design. And I was like, oh. Even on stream, I'm actually referencing this a lot, which was good and bad because then I wasn't using certain buttons that were in the Foundry box. I, again, am more of a visual person, so when I look through this, I can visualize where stuff is on a page. I can't do that as well with digital things. If I'm like, oh, I remember reading that, it's much easier for me to like flip through to that specific section than it is to scroll and click, and I get lost pretty easily. And the color scheme is really nice. It makes it kind of easier to read. On the back is a nice quick reference thing. They're both the same. I mean, the icon's different, but so you could actually keep these on the table if you wanted. So that's the books. Next, let's talk about the character sheets. The blank character sheets, I'm gonna go over first. You get, I think, 5 of them. So you can have a party of 5 or make additional characters. It's color coded, which is nice. You've got your dice icons here, and you come with matching dice that match the colors, which I didn't open because I have better dice than that. That's nice for a beginner who's never used dice or polyhedral dice like that before. And it also has like what your actions are. So it's got this like, it's like a quick tip bar, and it's on the backside as well. So when you flip your character sheet over, you have it on both sides. The other thing is that each section has a little label on it for what it is, and things are kind of outlined in red. The other thing I noticed too is your proficiency. In Pathfinder, your proficiency can go all the way to what, like legendary, 5 or 6 different levels of proficiency. They only include 2, which is good because otherwise your character sheet gets super claustrophobic. It's one of my major complaints with the character sheets. I think this makes it a little easier. However, I think it makes it harder if you ever switch from the beginner box character sheets to a new sheet, like the actual official sheet. I digress. So these are the basic ones, nothing too fancy. The cooler ones are actually the pre-made characters. So this is the fighter. You've got one for each character. I didn't pull them all out because there's just no point. But If you look at the back has like background information for your character, which is super nice. It tells you on the front, play a rogue if you like a fighter. Fight on the front lines, use the best weapons and armor, or react quickly to enemy action. We're gonna open this guy up. So your character sheet is mostly here. Got the same layout, so it's got the same boxes, it's got the less proficiency options in your skills, and again it has the letters, which also correspond to the player's handbook, but I just didn't need to use that. But the cool thing about this is it's listed right over here, so you can actually see on the right side, okay, so what is defense, how do you come up with those numbers? This is J, you come down here, this is J2, and blah, blah, blah. Now let's talk about the stuff that was uber cool that I didn't expect to be in the box. And this is what I think takes the Pathfinder Beginner Box kind of to the next level. This is something I've actually been thinking about making for the shop for D&D people. So it's kind of interesting to me to see someone else have these. But they're actually, so you get 5 of them. So 1 for every player and the DM. They're front and back. They're actually cards. They're plastic. You could bend them, but like they're pretty heavy duty. Like if you spill something on this, you could just wipe it off. Is a player reference card. So it has your actions and what you can do on your turn, what a check is, especially for beginners to tabletop games in general. Like that's super nice. And then on the back, you have some of the most common conditions. Now, obviously, this is not everything, and in the Pathfinder Beginner Box, they kind of shrink everything already. So on the front, you have like typical actions like drop prone, interact, leap, strike, and like what that means exactly and how many actions it takes. So those were super cool. The other thing was actually, it's gonna be hard to do this in a chair, but I got B-roll coming. Tokens. You also have these little like action tokens which fit on the card. Which is pretty cool, so you can track how many actions you've used, which I think is super useful. And honestly, they should just sell this by itself. I don't know if they do. If they do, I'll put a link down there. So you have all the different enemies, right? And then you also have, which is I think kind of where I'm like, okay, Pathfinder, I see you. They have your pre-made characters on the bottom, but they actually have a whole bunch of just general characters that you could use. So if you make your own, you can use these. The other cool thing I noticed too while popping one of these out, so this is a little kobold, and it says on the bottom what he is, right? And you're like, I don't know that I want my players to know what it is. But when you put it in the little stand, you actually can't see the name. So like that's well designed, if you ask me. So yeah, so there's tokens, right? Why would you need tokens if you don't have a map, right? So they actually have a heavy duty map. Now the one thing I noticed is it doesn't lay flat very well, but if you're at a table and you have everybody's books and junk, you can figure it out. But it's a double-sided map. It's real big. I can't even show you how big in the camera. But it's got both sides. Each one of the squares is a 5-foot square. It's laminated. Again, you could spill something on this, probably wipe off easy. You could probably use dry erase markers on here too to denote like trap, which I didn't test, but I feel like it would wipe off pretty easily, and it folds up really nice. This was really unexpected. I did not expect a map to be in this thing. I don't know what I was expecting, but not that. And it comes with little standees. There aren't a lot of standees, so that's the one thing you'll have to like kind of prep it ahead of time. So overall, summary, I would absolutely buy the beginner box again. Even though I didn't use it myself, the fact that I have it kind of for my collection is really nice. Also, just knowing what's in here, I could gift this to someone who wants to play Pathfinder for the first time. Like, I would totally buy this. It's a very good gift. The holidays are coming up. I know it's September, but you know, they already put Christmas stuff out in the store. So I think it's very high quality. It's super well made. I absolutely love it. I'm kind of disappointed I didn't actually get to use the physical one, but the Foundry one was also good. So in the scheme of things, I'm okay with it. Comparing this to the starter kit for 5e that I played back in whatever two, holy cow, is this better. It's also better than the Call of Cthulhu starter kit. Like the map and just the quality for the print books and everything just kind of blows everybody else out of the water so far, but I've only tried 3, so if you have another starter kit you want me to try, drop it down there. I will look for it this holiday season, and I'm down to try anything within reason. The D&D one is meant for like theater of the mind, which is fine and is a perfectly valid way to play, but when you're playing for the first time, I really do think having a map and like minis kind of takes it to the next level. Even if your map is just a big piece of poster board with a grid on it, and you know, your standees are, I literally have made little paper ones, little paper tents that you use as standees. I do think this is like a really good introduction just to tabletop games in general. I do think that if you have played D&D or have DM'd, that the book they provide with the GM stuff in here is kind of repetitive and you will skim like I did and get bored. But there are plenty of resources out there to fill in the gaps and make that connection for you without having to read that whole book. Let's go over the beginner box on Foundry. This thing is phenomenal. Now, part of that is partially because Paizo and Foundry work together. We're still playing this, so we're not gonna mess around too much on this floor. This is the like landing page, right? This is where we first start the game, or any role-playing moments, like this is where you show up. In the bottom right here, which you can't see because my head is in the way. Let me move my head. Bottom right down here, so you already had for the GM set up in the bars down here. You've got your difficulty challenge and how to like figure that out, and like the tables for that, the encounter stuff. So if you want to try to make your own encounters or something else happens, like that's all right here for you. I added more, so I added the GM screen, which they provide in the Foundry thing for you, which includes little buttons that literally go to everything. So like basic actions, things that they can do with one action, and then you can actually click on it and it'll say it in more detail. I don't think I have any modules turned on right now. You really kind of don't need anything. So you already have your scenes set up, but you don't actually have to do anything because the scenes are already set up for you and you already have them listed up at the top. This is the first floor. Now, obviously my players have gone through and messed everything up. So all of the enemies are gone and all of that. They already put your enemy tokens right on here. All you have to do is double click them. You can see all of their setup. For anybody who plays like 5e, like you'll look at this character sheet and you'll be like, why is our character sheet not like this? It's much prettier to look at, but it's also a little bit easier once you get used to it. You have to know what these symbols mean, but again, you can hover over them. So this is Ezrin, our wizard friend, so you can see all of his stats down here, and this section always stays up, which is super nice. And then you've got your actions, you've got your inventory here. There's your proficiencies are right here. So obviously you can roll these too. So click a button here just so you can see what it looks like. So you've got this, it'll tell you if you want to add your modifier or not, or your training on or not. You can add circumstantial like modifiers, and you can do, and then you just roll. It will pop up. The general consensus from my group was that it was pretty, like you had to get used to it, but once you knew where it was pretty nice. For monsters stuff, obviously you have everything right here and you can just click on your ability modifiers. Obviously you can still do your shift click for like a regular roll. Pretty standard, but it looks nicer. The coolest aspect, aside from it already being set up, like you can see here, I didn't have to do anything. Each area has individual numbers on here, so you can double click this, and this is the part that is kind of the coolest. You can double click this, it'll pull up since this is the beginner box, it's teaching you how to play, right? So it'll actually go through how to start combat in Foundry, if you've never used Foundry before. So if you are new to the Foundry game, this is definitely another reason to get the beginner box. And then it also gives you more details on exactly what your monsters are planning on doing. There's a section in here where there's a trap master, and her main focus is to set the traps first, and then she'll start attacking. And you really get like the motives and all of that behind each. It leads you to the next page at the bottom, or you can jump between in here. In certain areas, you can drop these into chat. So if you look at this up here, this middle part where it says you need a DC 10 athletics check, I can hit this little chat bubble and it'll actually prompt it in the chat, and then they can click on it and make the roll. I can even do that here I can roll the d8 for how many hit points they get and then assign it accordingly. This is super nice just because everything's already built in and you don't even really have to think about it. You can even take these and drag them and drop them on people's characters if stuff happens. Like there's some things that buff and debuff you depending on what they do, and it really is like super easy to do on here. The other cool thing that I didn't realize you could do until I actually got to floor 2, but there's actually, so in here, there's a barricade. They actually have macros built in. If I click this, it'll ask how they removed the barricade. I'm gonna say loudly, and then it actually moves the barricade on the screen, which is like pretty cool. Like all of these actually moved. I didn't do that in this particular part because I didn't know that that was a thing you could do, but I found that out on floor 2 and I was like, what? Another cool thing I like that they have like built in is like all of these different areas of loot actually have their own treasure chest block, and you can actually just distribute them. This one has nothing right now, but say it had 10 gold, you can hit the distribute coins and it'll distribute it to each player. You can have certain tokens just loot everything in the box and then it just automatically goes into their inventory, which is so much easier than going into the items and clicking and dragging into the player's inventory and then they deciding they wanted to give it to somebody else and then having to drag it into somebody else's inventory. You can literally drop everything in here. So if they want to drop something, there's actually atmosphere and sound. So here you can kind of hear the monsters. As you back away, you don't hear those monsters. Instead, now you're hearing the water from the fountain over here. So all of that said, if you mess up your chests or whatever, everything's in nice organized folders and compendiums. So here's all of the different loot, here's all the creatures, here's all the hazards. Everything is so well organized and put together, you literally have to do nothing. Now that I know that something like this exists, that you don't have to prep every single freaking detail and like the maps and everything already in here, I think I'll be using a lot of Paizo's pre-made Foundry modules. But we're hoping, you know, to continue this on a monthly basis. So I think I'm gonna be investing in that as well, just because it's so much easier, even though I did, it's right here, I did buy the book because again, I'm a very physical book person. But if you're going to try to also move into a digital realm to make it easier to meet up and things like that, and you've never tried Foundry before, if you're going to try Foundry, get the beginner box for Pathfinder, because it really does walk you through not only Foundry and how to do things in Foundry, but it also walks you through Pathfinder really well. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. I would recommend either of these if you're looking into getting into Pathfinder or just moving away from D&D after all of that stuff earlier this year. Even if not, I do really enjoy Pathfinder as a whole. The 3-action economy seems more strategic, honestly, and it just feels like you have more to give. Now, I wasn't playing as a player, but I feel like in D&D, I almost hardly ever use my movement, and the fact that you can not use an action for movement in Pathfinder kind of feels nice. The encounters feel more balanced. Now granted, we're all playing at really low levels, so I am planning on running Abomination Bolts after we get through the beginner box, just to kind of see what it's like at higher levels. And then after that point, I could probably give a better review, because again, this is my first time playing Pathfinder. Though I feel like in the beginning, since they're so low level, it's pretty easy to accidentally kill your players. So I want to see what it's like when they're closer to like level 4 or level 5, how the encounters will go. So stay tuned. I'll probably do an update video after I get some more experience in Pathfinder. I do have a great community of people and that is who helped me play. You can actually watch us do the Foundry Beginner Box. The time of this recording, who knows when I actually post this, but at the time of recording this, we have one more probably part of the beginner box. I'll put up here the other 2 parts, and I actually am streaming the behind the scenes, so you can kind of see the GM side of things, because I think that's kind of the coolest aspect of the whole Foundry Beginner Box. I will see you guys in the next one, and oh, I should also mention, I sell notebooks now for Pathfinder. This is the GM one. This is my GM one because I'm preparing for Abomination Vaults. I have timeline related stuff in here already, but it's pretty much the exact same thing as the GM one except for this spread here. So this spread here is the player dashboard, right? I'm gonna open up. So you've got your 2 dry erase pages like usual, but the actual what you're tracking here is different. AC, HP, perception, speed, it's just a little bit different. Your initiative here, and then obviously the monster stats are different. However, I am going to sell these in page packs too, so if you actually like the other version, the more Art Deco style version, I will have page packs, so you could buy the other one and then just put these monster things in that new one, or if you can mix and match. Some of them are system agnostic, but really the only part that's different is the encounter section. The rest, you've got your session prep, it's just a different style. I do have a player one too, but it's not here because I'm not a player, so I haven't used it yet, but I do have a player one as well. I have not decided on whether or not to make class-based ones for that. If it is something that people want, you're gonna have to tell me. Until I sell a lot of the regular class or the non-class based ones, I hesitate to put all that time into designing class-based ones for Pathfinders. You're gonna have to let me know because I have to buy in bulk and it's a whole process. Until then, there's at least 2. Go do that. That's how you support me in this channel, by the way, is purchasing my crap. It's not crap though, it's really good stuff. Anyway, and I will see you guys in the next one.